Everything you are or ever will be is a result of what is going on inside your mind. This is the most awesome concept that you can dramatically change the outer realities of your life by changing your self-concept. That your self-concept is that bundle of beliefs inside that determines everything that happens to you. Your self-concept is the sum total result of every single piece of information that you've ever taken in about yourself or your world, accepted as true. It becomes part of your self-concept, and your self-concept is the corresponding inner mechanism that determines what happens to you. What does this mean? It means that all change begins with a change in the self-concept. All change begins by you taking in new information that changes your beliefs. Your beliefs do become your realities, that you actually see the world in terms of what you believe to be true about it. Beliefs create the actual facts.
Now, my favorite story that illustrates this is about a guy, he's an Australian. He just died a couple years ago. His name was Cliff Young. And in 1983, when he was 61 years old, he showed up at a race. It's the Sydney to Melbourne race. It's 875 kilometers. That's about 650 miles. And it's normally a 6.5-day race. And most of the people that run this, it's considered one of the hardest endurance races of ultra marathons you can possibly do. And most people that run this are like 30 or younger. And he shows up to a field of 120 runners, and he's 61. And he's wearing Oshkosh overalls. He's got on construction boots with galoshes on top of them because it might rain. And he's wearing a baseball cap. Everyone else is wearing Nike, Puma, Asics running gear. They're all ready to go. And they said, "Sir, you can't run this race. You'll have a heart attack. We've never heard of you. Have you ever run a marathon before?" "No." "You ever run a 10K?" "No." "Well, what makes you think you can do this?" He said, "Well, I'm a farmer. And we have a 2,000-acre farm. I have 2,000 sheep. And up until 2 years ago, we never had any farm equipment because we couldn't afford it. And when a storm was becoming, I would go out with my dog and we would herd up 2,000 sheep. Sometimes it would take us 2 or 3 days to get them all into a safe place, and I never slept. So I think I can do this." Well, they didn't take him very seriously, but they decided to let him run. They thought he'd probably drop out after the first day and didn't care about it too much. And the first day, everyone takes off, and, boom, the gun goes off, and everyone's running real fast. And here's Cliff. It's what they called the Cliff Young Shuffle. They actually named this after him. And what happened was he was way behind. And the first day, everyone went to sleep, and, he was still running, and they woke up and they started running. He was way behind. But see, Cliff had an advantage that nobody knew about. The advantage was he'd never read a book about running. He'd never read Runner's World magazine. He'd never talked to an elite runner, never talked to a coach. He didn't know that when you do this kind of race, you're supposed to run for 18 hours, sleep for 6. Run for 18, sleep for 6. So when everyone went to bed, he was so far behind, no one was there to tell him to go to bed. So he just kept on running. He ran nonstop for 5.5 days and broke the record by 9 hours. So sometimes your belief about what you think, nobody thought anyone could break the 4-minute mile until Roger Bannister did it. And then the next year, 11 people did it. Now they knew it was possible. And so I want you to take the position that anything is possible. There's a wonderful quote that says, "Never tell anyone something cannot be done." God may have been waiting for centuries for somebody ignorant enough of the impossible to do that very thing. So think about it. You may be that person. That person could be you. Starting today, you could do anything you want in your life. I was working in New York with some real estate agents during the subprime, crisis that was facing America. And I asked him, there was one guy, he was doing 400% better than everyone else in a down market. And I said, "How do you do this?" I said, "What kind of thoughts do you think when this is going on?" He says, "Oh, I just tell myself I make money no matter what the market's doing." That's his belief. And because he believes it, he creates it. Now you might say, well, he believes it because he did it. And I'm telling you, he did it because he believes it. See? And so the reality is we can create anything we want if we believe in it.
Now, beliefs are the hardest of all things to change because we defend them so vigorously. We have to be willing to give up some of our self-limiting beliefs. We have to be willing to look at our beliefs honestly and say, do these beliefs serve me? Is this what I want to be? Is this what I want to do? Is this the best that I can have? And you begin to question your beliefs and change your self-concept by taking in new information that develops a new self-concept. And that brings us to a concept called the power of suggestion. Now, the power of suggestion works on us all of our lives. The power of suggestion is extremely strong. What it does is it begins working on us almost from the time that we're born, sometimes from before birth, and the power of suggestion shapes us. It means that every single thought you think, everything you hear, everything that you see, touch, taste, or smell, everything that affects you in any way has an effect on your personality. We say it this way. We say everything counts. Everything counts, and especially when you become an adult. Now, the average adult in America watches 20 to 25 hours of television every week. The average senior citizen watches about 7 hours of television. Average child watches 3 or 4 hours of television per day. You know that the average chief executive officer of major American corporations watches less than 5 hours per week? Now, let me ask you a very simple question. Do you think there's a correlation between the number of hours that a person watches television and how successful they are in life? Do you think that the suggestive influences, books, magazines, tapes, courses, seminars, people, television programs, and so on, that you watch, listen to, read, associate with on comic strips and the sports pages, who read junky magazines or nothing at all, listen to the radio, don't do anything with their time or their minds? They say, but I want to be successful. I want to be more successful. I said, well, what about all these things that you're doing to waste your time? They say, well, I don't count that. Unfortunately, nature counts everything. So this brings us to some laws that I want to share with you. The first law is the law of emotion. The law of emotion says simply this. It says that every decision that you make is based on emotion. Is that we used to say over and over again that people are 90% emotional and 10% logical. Well, one of the great discoveries that I've made in the course of my research is the discovery that we are 100% emotional, that we're not even 99% emotional. Every single decision we make is an emotional decision. If somebody says, well, it's the logical thing to do, what it simply means is they have more emotion invested in that, even though it sounds logical. The law of emotion says that every decision that we make is emotional, and it says this. It says that stronger emotion will dominate a weaker emotion. So whichever emotion is stronger will be the dominant emotion and will determine what you do. All action is determined by the emotion that is predominant at the time. And with whatever the stronger emotion, if it is fear, fear will determine what you do. If it is desire, desire will determine what you do. The two major emotions that wrestle within us all the time are fear versus desire. Goes on over and over again. Your fears that hold you back, your desires that propel you forward. Now, how do you turn this equation so that your desires win? Very simple. You use the law of concentration, and you think about what you want all the time. You dwell on what you want all the time. You keep your mind fixed on your desires. You become totally preoccupied with what you want, and as we said before, your fears have a tendency to dwindle. But whichever thing you think about, if you think about your fears or you think about your desires, whichever one you think about, by the law of emotion is going to determine your actions, and your actions will determine your outcome. And this brings us to another critical mental law, and it is this. It is what is called the law of reversibility. The law of reversibility says simply this, is that if you achieve a certain level of success, a certain level of health, a certain quality of relationship, then that quality of relationships will create a subjective state. A subjective state means a feeling or an emotional state. In other words, if you win a prize, you will feel like a winner. If you succeed in business, you'll feel like a success. In other words, something happens, you feel great. You get the feeling. However, the law of reversibility says this. If you can grasp this, this one fact alone can change your life, because it has changed mine. Is that if you can create the feeling will trigger the law of attraction and correspondence into motion and will draw into your life the people, circumstances, and opportunities necessary to create the objective that is constant with the subjective. And here is the method. It's so simple, it's astonishing. It is this, is whenever you think of something that you really desire, imagine that you have it already. Imagine that you have it already. It sounds like a game, like children would play. But it is so powerful that it is awe-inspiring, and all I suggest you do is try it for a little while. Just imagine, close your eyes, drive it along, think about it if necessary, stand, relax, do whatever you want, but just imagine that you've already accomplished it and try to get the feeling. Get the feeling as though it were already accomplished. You don't even really have to worry about the process between the two or what the steps are. All you have to do is hold that feeling very, very intensely. Now, what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you or suggest that you go on what we call a 21-day PMA diet.
What I'm going to ask you to do is that you practice these steps for 21 days. The reason for this is it takes 21 days to develop a new habit pattern of any kind. If you work on a habit pattern and you practice it every day, you begin to develop new neural grooves in your brain that cause you to think and act more optimistically automatically. You get up in the morning feeling better. You are more positive toward the challenges you face during the day. You're more optimistic in the face of adversity. You start to become a more confident and optimistic person. And when you do, you'll find your whole life will open up around you like sunshine on a bright morning. In 21 days, you won't even notice the difference. You'll be so astonished at yourself. Number 1 is positive self-talk. It means that you are optimistic in your conversation with yourself. What we have found is that 95% of your emotions, how you feel about yourself on a minute-to-minute basis, are determined by the way you talk to yourself. Now, the average person has about 1,500 words of dialogue running through their brain every minute. It runs at incredible speed. It's almost impossible. It's called stream of consciousness. It's like a river of consciousness. Your job is to deliberately interfere with that stream and make sure that your thoughts are on what you want and are off of the things that you don't want. We know also that there is a thing in cognitive psychology called explanatory style. Explanatory style has to do with how you explain things to yourself. We know that successful people are people who explain things to themselves in a positive way. They say, well, that's an interesting situation, or, oh, that'll work out okay, or don't worry about it. Everything's going to happen for a good reason, and so on. W. Clement Stone, one of the richest men in the world, said that one of the keys to his success was to look at every adversity and immediately say, that's good, and then to find something in it that was good. Find something in it that was good. So, the second part of positive self-talk is to control your inner dialogue, is to control what's happening inside you, and to be aware that the average person, if they're not careful, will have a tendency to be negative. You'll have a tendency to think about the things you worry about. You'll have a tendency to be skeptical. You'll have a tendency to be cynical. It's absolutely amazing that positive people today, who are basically people with high levels of mental health, are under attack by the negative people. And here's the key to positive self-talk. It's one of the most important parts of modern psychology, and it's the use of affirmations. Remember, you become what you think about. What you repeat to yourself over and over again is accepted by your subconscious mind as a command. If I could give you one secret of success, it would be this. It is to talk about the things you want and refuse to talk about the things you don't want. It's to talk continually in terms of what you want to happen. It's to interpret things continually in terms of the way you want them to be. It's to continually control your inner dialogue so you're always saying the things to yourself and then to others that are consistent with the person you want to be and the life that you want to have. Remember, 95% of your feelings are determined by the way you talk to yourself. It's absolutely essential that you talk to yourself the way that you want to be. The second key is positive visualization. Positive visualization means that you control your mental pictures. If you see yourself and think about yourself as an extraordinary person, if you see yourself as a success, if you see yourself as happy and positive and confident, in control, if you see yourself as a loving parent or spouse, you will act that way toward others. So therefore, all improvement in your life begins with an improvement in your mental pictures, with you consciously and deliberately selecting the pictures that you're going to allow your mind to dwell upon. And that word dwell is terribly important. When you dwell upon a picture, your subconscious mind, just as with affirmations, accepts the picture as a command and goes to work to bring that picture into your reality. If you begin to tell your brain that you intend to be a great success in your field, that you are going to move to the top, that you're going to be one of the most pristine people in what you do, if you're going to make a lot of money, whatever it happens to be, this is accepted as a command, and from then on you begin to see all kinds of possibilities that help you move toward achieving that goal. Why is it that successful people move so rapidly toward achieving their goals? It's very simple. It's because they're thinking all the time, and as a result of thinking about what they want, they see all kinds of opportunities around them to achieve them. The average person doesn't even see, because the average person is so worried about how little money they have and how much their bills are, and all the problems are. And the more they think about those things, the more they get them. So, with regard to positive visualization, see yourself as you desire. Remember we said earlier, see yourself enjoying the success that you want. See yourself as you desire. And what will happen is your subconscious mind will say, well, this must be a command. This must be what you want. So it goes to work and it coordinates your words, actions, thoughts, activities, emotions, and so on, so they're consistent with achieving and bringing that mental picture into your reality. And finally, the third part of positive visualization is to feed your mind continually. Feed your mind on a regular basis, the way you would feed your body with a special kind of foods. Feed your mind with pictures consistent with what you want. Just before you go to bed at night, visualize and see your ideal situation the coming day. See yourself performing at your best. See yourself living your ideal lifestyle. When you feed that picture into your mind just before you go to sleep, what happens is your subconscious and your superconscious goes to work on it all night long. Very, very powerful technique. One of the most powerful of all for success. Now, the next technique, number 3, is positive mental food. Just as we said, we're talking about mental food in a way, but just as we said before, that you become what you think about, if I were to say to you, oh, there's a remarkable discovery. Did you know that you become what you eat? That your food determines your physical health? If I were to say that to you, you'd say, oh, give me a break, Brian. Everybody knows you become what you eat. The problem is we just don't eat the things that we should. Positive mental food is exactly the same. You become what you think about most of the time. In other words, your whole life today, everything around you has been determined by what you think about most of the time. You've attracted this into your life. You've attracted your relationship. You've determined your income by what you think about most of the time. Now, if you think about positive, constructive, success-oriented, happy things, you start to have more of those in your life. If you think about movies and television and sports and wasting your time and socializing, well, you'll have a lot of those in your life, but you won't have anything else. Remember, whatever you think about most of the time crowds the other things out of your life. So, in becoming what you think about, what do you feed your mind on a regular basis? And this is not something that you are casual about. You must be very, very deliberate and feed your mind a diet of mental protein, of highly nutritious words, pictures, quotes, magazines, television, audio tapes, books, newspapers, and so on. The average person, when you look at what they read, the average person reads sensational, negativistic, violent garbage. In fact, they tried to publish a newspaper on several occasions that only had good news in it, and the newspaper failed. Do you know why it failed? It's because the great majority of people wouldn't buy a newspaper that did not have dreadful stories of dreadful things happening to innocent people. Your job is to ask yourself when you look at a book, is this going to help you in some way? Let me ask you a question. What do you think would happen to you if you read a whole lot of horror books, or a whole lot of murder books, or a whole lot of violence books? What do you think would happen to you if you read these books all the time? Do you think it would affect your mind? You bet your bip it would affect your mind. What do successful people read? They read books that are positive and constructive and success-oriented and uplifting and educational and motivational. If you read all the negative stories in newspapers day after day after day, you get the idea, by the way, that our whole society is falling apart. If you read negative stories in magazines, you get the same thing. Things that you feed into your mind have such an enormous impact on your mind. Make sure that what you're listening to, what you're watching, what you're hearing is consistent with what you want to accomplish.